Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back nearly 2,000 years to the bustling streets of ancient Rome, a world of emperors, aqueducts, and public baths where privacy was optional and hygiene was debatable. This was a city where gladiators fought for glory, philosophers argued in smoky forums, and the wrong insult could get you fed to something with teeth. But behind the marble statues and military conquests was a daily grind far messier than most history books admit. So tonight we're asking, what would it actually feel like to live just one day in ancient Rome? Let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fun seeing who's joining this journey from across the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe let a candle flicker for a bit of atmosphere, bonus points if it smells like olives. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit up, slowly. Your spine crackles like a burnt scroll, and your joints ache with the kind of misery that doesn't care how old you are. You could be 20 or 60. It makes no difference when you sleep on a slanted floor next to a wall that hums with the scratching of rats behind it. You wiggle your toes. Still there. That's the first win of the day. From outside, the sounds of Rome pour in like a slap. Street vendors are already at war with each other, yelling about dates and barley and the miracle of their fish being only half rotten. Donkeys bray as they're whipped through the alleys. A baby cries with the fury of a senator whose wine has run dry. Somewhere nearby, a man is vomiting onto cobblestones. A normal Tuesday. You rub your face with the sleeve of your tunic, which smells like wet hay and despair. You slept in your clothes, because everyone does. Changing into fresh garments is a luxury for the upper classes, and, let's be honest, pointless when you'll just be coated in sweat and soot again by midday. You lean over to grab your sandals, which are tucked under a piece of firewood, doubling as a table leg. The sandals are still moist from yesterday's rainwater that seeped through the ceiling. Mold is forming on one of the straps. You sigh, pick them up anyway, and slide your feet in with the grace of a man accepting his fate. Downstairs, the building groans as someone stumbles down the uneven stone steps. The walls are so thin, you can hear every cough, sneeze, and insult exchanged between neighbors. One man shouts about someone stealing his chicken. Another screams back that it's not a chicken, it's his wife's pet goose. And anyway, it wandered into his stew pot of its own free will. You glance around the room. Your possessions are few. A small clay cup, a bent spoon, a crust of bread hard enough to double as a weapon, and a wooden comb missing 2 teeth. There's a jar of olive oil with only a smear left in it, and a sack of lentils you've been rationing like gold dust. In one corner, there's a straw doll your neighbor's kid left behind, now serving as a tragic mascot of poverty. The walls are mottled with black patches of moisture. You don't want to know what kind of fungi live here, but they've got a better real estate deal than you. Every so often, a piece of the wall crumbles off when someone slams a door 3 floors below. You've gotten used to it. Rome is collapsing slowly, and you just happen to be living inside one of its many open wounds. You step outside your door and are immediately brushed by a swarm of flies escaping someone's breakfast. They move like a living cloud, buzzing around your head and then vanishing down the stairwell. The hallway smells like moldy figs and wet leather. A neighbor greets you with a grunt and a burp, his breath strong enough to strip the paint off a shield. You nod back, because that's what passes for pleasantries. The stairs are slick with humidity and something else that you hope is just spilled porridge. You take each step like it's your last, which it might be, considering how often the top floor collapses on unlucky souls. It's happened before. You've seen it. One day, a man named Flavius was arguing with his wife on the 5th floor. The next, they were both part of the street decorations. At the base of the stairs, you step over a sleeping dog that may or may not belong to anyone. It twitches and snarls in its sleep. You don't blame it. Life is stressful when every meal is uncertain and every passerby is a potential kicker. You whisper a quick apology and squeeze past. Out in the alley, the heat hits you like a wall of wet wool. It's early, but the sun is already cooking yesterday's sewage in the gutters. You walk past an open window where someone is frying something in rancid oil. The smell is so aggressive it nearly peels the enamel off your teeth. You quicken your pace and try not to breathe too deeply. You dodge a cart rolling by, pulled by a donkey with one eye and a mean expression. The driver hurls curses at everyone, including the donkey, the gods, and his own sandals. You give him a wide berth. Last time you didn't. You ended up ankle-deep in fish guts and covered in what turned out not to be water. This is Rome. Glorious, filthy, roaring Rome. You are a speck in its machinery. A warm body taking up a spot between broken stones and broken dreams. And somehow, despite everything, you are still here. Awake, walking, wincing, alive. And that counts for something. You step outside your cramped room and instantly regret it. The hallway is darker than it should be for morning, with only a narrow slit in the wall pretending to be a window. The floor is slick with something unidentifiable and sticky, possibly olive oil or maybe last night's stew. Someone's laundry drips from a rope overhead and hits you square in the eye. You blink it away and press forward, feet slapping against worn stone stairs that lean left, then right, then maybe left again, like the building is too tired to stand up straight anymore. The stairwell reeks of mildew, feet, old goat cheese, and ambition that died 5 tenants ago. You hold your breath until your lungs protest, but even that doesn't protect you from the punch of ammonia when you reach the bottom floor. Someone forgot their chamber pot again. You sidestep it, narrowly avoiding a fresh splatter of what might be breakfast or aftermath. Either way, you're not interested in knowing. Out on the street, the sounds of Rome don't welcome you. They attack you. Metal clinks from a smithy 2 alleys down. A fishmonger screams about his latest catch, while his wife screams about his wandering eyes. A pair of children race past you barefoot, giggling and kicking up dust from a road that's more waste than stone. You duck just in time as a courier on a horse barrels past, muttering curses at your existence as though you chose to be in his way. You turn down a side alley for water. The public fountain, fed by aqueduct and faith, is lined with locals elbowing for position. You queue behind a woman who smells like burnt bread and keeps yelling at her son to stop chewing his own tunic. When it's finally your turn, you scoop water into a chipped clay cup. It's lukewarm, slightly gritty, and tastes vaguely of limestone and lost hope. You drink it anyway. You're not about to fight hydration this early in the day. As you lean down to wash your face, a rat darts past your sandal. You freeze, halfway between rinse and scream, watching it disappear into the same crevice your landlord promised to fill last season. Of course he didn't. He's been too busy raising rent and ignoring complaints about the tilting roof, the drafty walls, and the neighbors who argue about politics loud enough to summon Jupiter. Returning home to grab your tunic, you're hit by a gust of air that's part cooking smoke, part sewage, and part human. There's no such thing as personal scent here. You all blend into one another's stench. Your neighbor Marcus passes you on the stairwell, shirtless and humming off-key, carrying a basket of unwashed leeks like it's a treasure. You nod. He nods. Neither of you say anything. You both know words are wasted on mornings like this. Back inside your room, you attempt to dress without dislocating a shoulder. Your tunic has shrunk again. You've grown. You can't tell. It clings in all the wrong places and smells like moldy flour. You sigh and tie the belt anyway. There's a hole near your hip, but patching it would require thread and motivation, and you've got neither. You grab a piece of stale flatbread from a cracked plate and chew it until your jaw cramps. There's no time for a real meal. You've got to be out the door and down to the forum if you want even a sliver of work today. The competition is brutal, and the jobs are worse. Masonry if you're lucky. Sewer maintenance if you're not. If nothing comes up, there's always the dock, where lifting amphorae full of wine for minimum coin is practically a death sentence for your spine. You step outside again, one hand shielding your eyes from the sun already glaring at full strength. It smells even worse than earlier, if that's possible. Someone nearby is roasting onions. Someone else is butchering something you sincerely hope was already dead. And somewhere down the block, a man is arguing with his own donkey, loudly. As you head toward the forum, your sandal snaps. You stop. Swear. Try to tie it back together with a piece of reed you found on the ground. It holds, barely. A child snickers nearby. You give him a look. He sticks out his tongue. You sigh and move on. The sun climbs higher, cooking the street and your skin along with it. Sweat gathers behind your ears, under your arms, and everywhere else that chafes. You pass a line of slaves being marched through the market, their expressions flat, their feet dragging. You avert your eyes, not out of shame, but because there's nothing you can do for them. Nothing you can do for yourself, either. At the forum, the scene is already a chaotic mess of bodies, voices, and desperation. Men wave their arms, shout over one another, boast about skills they don't have. You squeeze into the crowd, scanning faces for any sign of opportunity. A foreman points. You raise your hand. He points at someone else. You're invisible again. You loiter for an hour, maybe two. The crowd thins as jobs are assigned. You get nothing, not even a promise, just a shrug and a scowl. You lean against a column and debate your next move. Try another spot? Head to the docks? Beg for coin outside the baths? None of it appeals. All of it is necessary. As the heat grows unbearable, you retreat to a shaded corner where an old man sells vinegar water from a dented jug. You pay 2 copper coins for a cup that tastes like wine's disappointing cousin, and wonder how long it'll be before your stomach regrets this decision, probably before nightfall. A group of men nearby argue about taxes, grain shortages, and who's to blame. One blames the Senate. One blames the gods. One blames his wife. None of them agree. None of them have answers. You sip your sour drink and stare at the ground. A passing cart throws up a cloud of dust that coats your arms and face. You blink, cough, wipe your mouth, and think, this is only the beginning of the day. You sit cross-legged on the uneven floor, brushing crumbs off your tunic that's been dyed brown more by grime than fabric. The first bite of your morning bread crunches between your molars like stepping on broken tiles. Your tongue finds a tiny stone baked right into the loaf. Not again. This is what they call panis plebeius, the bread of the poor. Ground in stone mills, often swept with dust and mixed with whatever was lying around. You spit out the gravel, but keep chewing. It's either this or nothing, and you already skipped dinner. You glance at your cup. Wine, they call it. But this is not the kind of wine you toast with in marble forums or sip while reclining on silken couches. No, this is vinegar-drenched swill, watered down until it tastes like sour regret. They say it's to stop the spread of disease. Your starting disease might taste better. A pigeon perches on the wooden beam above you. It stares like it knows something you don't, Afeng. Maybe it's here for crumbs. Maybe it's judging you. Either way, you try not to make sudden moves. You've seen what these birds can do when they feel challenged. The city's full of them. Some even walk right into kitchens like they pay rent. A few floors below, someone starts shouting. You can't tell if it's a vendor, a neighbor, or just another fight between overworked hands and undercooked ambition. The walls here are thin enough to hear a conversation through 4 units and thick enough to trap the smell of someone boiling cabbage. You wrinkle your nose and try to focus on your soggy wine. From the street, a man drags a cart of fish heads and offal, his voice trailing behind him like a dying hymn. Fresh scraps, still wriggling. The scent rides the breeze and meets the fumes of yesterday's chamber pots tossed into the alley. You turn your face toward the window, but even that doesn't help. The tenement's upper floors trap heat and odor like a Roman punishment. You try to eat faster, get it over with. Your teeth grind against another pebble. How many more of these are in there? You'd complain to the baker, but he has 3 teeth left, a permanent scowl and a cleaver. Besides, he's your neighbor's cousin's cousin. Word travels fast around here, and enemies multiply faster than bread mold. You break the last piece of the crust, hard enough to double as a roof tile, and chew until your jaw goes numb. Hunger wins over dental longevity again. Suddenly, a splash. Someone dumps something out the window. 2 floors up, it hits the alleyway with a splat. Judging by the smell, it's not water. You thank the gods it missed your only tunic drying on a string out the window. Small victories. The pigeon is still watching. Your stomach gurgles. Not from satisfaction, more like a warning. That bread might have had a little too much age on it, or maybe it was the wine. Either way, your bowels are beginning to draft escape plans. You sigh. The communal latrine is 2 streets over, and there's a line already. Plus, you heard rumors someone got mugged there yesterday. Pants down, dignity stolen. You consider your options, hold it and suffer. Or make the trek, clutching your belly like a wounded soldier. You opt to wait, at least until your neighbor finishes hogging the stairs. She's been pacing them all morning, yelling at her runaway goat. Yes, someone has a goat in the tenement. It's a miracle the whole building hasn't collapsed yet. You drink the last sip of wine, swish it around to clean the gravel off your gums, and swallow hard. Your stomach grumbles louder. You feel like you've just eaten a bowl of construction debris. Your flatmate stirs on the mat beside you, groaning like a man 3 weeks past his expiration date. He scratches something on his chest that's probably not just a rash and reaches for the bread. You're glad you finished yours already. Morning, he grunts. You nod. Words cost energy. He takes a bite and immediately spits out a pebble. You pretend not to notice. From the window, the sun climbs higher, illuminating the layers of soot on your walls. You wonder how long it's been since anyone cleaned anything here. Maybe the pigeons will start paying rent. Or maybe they already do. And live better than you. A woman below calls out for her son. The boy answers from somewhere above. That's not good. You hear a brief commotion, then silence, followed by a rooster's confused crow. You don't ask. Another day. Another round of stone-flavored breakfast and vinegar dreams. And still, you've barely begun. Your bones already hurt, and you haven't even stood up yet. And now the goat is bleating again. You sit cross-legged on the uneven floor, brushing crumbs off your tunic that's been dyed brown more by grime than fabric. Across the room, your neighbor Gaius is already chewing loudly on his own morning rock loaf. He doesn't say a word, just chews and breathes like a gladiator, fresh from a brawl. You try not to meet his eyes. He's got one of those faces that makes you think twice about borrowing salt. Your bread, hard as masonry, flakes as you bite into it. Somewhere in your mouth, something crunches that should not crunch. It might be sand or stone, or whatever passed for flour after rats chewed through the grain sacks. You chew slowly, like grinding your way through a moral failure. Your teeth already hurt, and it's only daybreak. The wine you wash it down with is watered down to the color of regret, a mix of spoiled grapes and disappointment. Romans love to brag about their wine, but what you get is the dregs of the dregs, skimmed from a public vat that's probably been urinated in at least once, maybe twice, on festival days. You feel something run across your foot, not a breeze. Breezes do not have claws. You look down, and sure enough, there it goes. A rat the size of a house cat, dragging what looks like a fishbone in its teeth. The rat pauses, glances back at you like it's daring you to say something, then disappears under the wooden slats. You don't even flinch. That's just how mornings go. Your stomach groans, not from hunger, but in warning. You debate whether you should head to the public latrine now or later. Now means you might get the seat with a view of the river. Later means you risk sharing a bench with 4 drunk bricklayers and a guy who insists on telling jokes about vomit while relieving himself. You hear a thud next door, not a light one. That's the sound of someone collapsing or a goat kicking over a crate. Both have happened in that apartment before. You ignore it. You've made it this far by not asking questions. Now outside, the streets are already ankle-deep in trash and shouting. A merchant screams about fish prices while waving a rotting eel. Children dart between legs like rats with sandals. The cobblestones sweat under your feet, slick from spilled wine, goat urine, and things better left unidentified. You step over a shattered amphora, careful not to cut yourself, because gods forbid you have to visit the healer again. Last time, he tried to fix your cough with burned onion juice and a prayer to Mars. You reach the bakery. Sort of. It's not much of a shop. It's a hot brick hole in a wall with a teenager half asleep behind the counter and an old woman throwing dough into the oven like she's punishing it. You wait your turn, trying not to breathe too deeply. The smell is half-burnt bread and all sweat. The guy ahead of you farts loudly, pretends it didn't happen, and orders extra loaves. You don't even blink. Everyone smells like damp wool and digestive failure. Your turn comes. You hand over your last coin, which you're pretty sure has bite marks on it. The teenager takes it with a shrug and gives you a lump that could either be a bread roll or a fossil. You don't care. It's food. Sort of. You take a bite. It tastes like ash and chalk, with a hint of sock. Still better than last week, when you swore the bread had mold that blinked at you. You sit on a broken barrel outside and gnaw quietly. A man nearby is trying to sell what he claims are love potions. He's got 5 teeth and smells like boiled cabbage, and one of the bottles is visibly leaking onto his leg. You watch 2 women argue over a chicken. The chicken, wisely, is trying to escape in the other direction. Behind you, someone vomits into a gutter. The pigeons dive in like it's a buffet. You lose your appetite. Your wine bottle slips from your grip and clinks onto the stone, not broken, miraculously. You take another sip and wince. The flavor has evolved since the last swallow. Somehow, it now tastes like warm vinegar mixed with sadness. The sun creeps higher. Your tunic starts to itch. The fleas have begun their morning parade. You try to scratch discreetly. A kid walks by and points at you, laughing. His nose is leaking something that should be in a medical scroll. You flip him off, he throws a pebble at you, and runs. And still, this is just breakfast. You push open the wooden door and instantly regret it. The stench is so dense, it feels like something alive slaps you in the face. Not just foul, but historic. Like this odor has tenure. It's fermented in the cracks of stone and wood for centuries, steeped in humanity's worst leftovers. You hesitate. A deep breath might kill you. A shallow one might make you gag. But either way, you're stepping in. Inside, 2 long stone benches stretch along both walls, each one riddled with equally spaced holes carved into the top. Beneath them, a narrow trench of water moves slowly, sluggishly, carrying the city's sins out to whatever poor stream draws the short straw this week. 20 men, some young, some older than Rome itself, squat or perch on the benches like bloated pigeons. There is no privacy, no walls, no shame, just skin, stone, and steam. You glance around. Everyone seems numb to the horror. A man near the far corner is eating olives straight from a pouch, nonchalant. Another one reads aloud from a wax tablet while scratching his back with a stick. The guy to your left has both hands behind his head, like he's lounging on a beach, whistling through missing teeth. And in the corner, someone is snoring. He may be asleep. He may be dead. Either way, he's not the worst thing in the room. There's one empty spot between a sweating merchant and a man muttering about Neptune. You slide in, avoiding eye contact, tucking your tunic tightly so it doesn't touch anything. You clutch it like a lifeline and try not to breathe through your nose. Your thighs stick to the warm stone. You feel the faint heat radiating from the bench, not from the sun, from generations of unfortunate souls who sat here before you. A drip hits your foot. You pray it's condensation. You know it's not. Then you notice the stick. In the middle of the room stands a wooden handle with a wet sponge tied to the end. It's communal. It's for wiping. And it is, by far, the most terrifying object you've ever seen. It rests in a bucket of water that hasn't been changed since Julius Caesar had hair. You make a note to wipe with sand instead, or just never again. A rat scurries across the floor, bold and thick, tail dragging like a rope soaked in nightmares. Nobody reacts. These creatures are as normal here as sandals. It pauses near your foot. You flinch. It stares. You lose the staring contest. You shift on the stone. A little too much. A squeak escapes from under you, echoing through the chamber like a trumpet of betrayal. A few heads turn. One man nods approvingly. Another claps once. You want to die. Somewhere behind you, a splash. Then a shriek. Then laughter. Someone slipped. You don't look. You can't afford to know. You already know too much. The merchant beside you leans in and offers you a date. You decline. He eats it anyway, his fingers greasy and suspicious. You see him wipe them on the bench. You stop breathing altogether. The sounds are constant, dripping, gurgling, hissing, moaning, not a single one from a mouth. You try to empty your mind, pretend you're at the baths, at the forum, anywhere else. But the smell keeps dragging you back, like a jealous lover. You think you feel something crawl up your ankle. You clench, instinctively. You might never unclench. A young boy runs in, holding his nose, dragging his father. His face is already green. He screams as he's sat down. He is now one of you. Welcome to the war, kid. The door slams again. A breeze wafts in, but it's not fresh. It's just wind carrying shame. The muttering man starts humming a hymn. The tune is nice. The lyrics are about constipation. You hate how catchy it is. You consider your options. Get up and leave. Deal with the shame of unfinished business. Or stay and risk becoming one with the bench. You choose purgatory. You stay. At least you can leave with your dignity, even if not your appetite. Someone sneezes. Loud. Wet. You feel a mist. You wipe your arm with your tunic and immediately regret it. The man beside you asks if you've ever been to Carthage. You say no. He says the toilets are worse there. You believe him, because you need to believe there's something worse than this. The communal stick falls. It rolls toward your sandal. Time slows. Every eye in the room turns. You do the only thing you can do. You scream and lift your feet. Someone laughs. A lot of people laugh. You are now entertainment. You will never recover from this. Then, finally, you feel your stomach settle. Not better, just defeated. The body knows when it's outmatched. You do what you came to do, as quickly and with as little emotion as possible. You make no sound. You think no thoughts. You stare at the wall and imagine the sea. When it's done, you stand. You don't look back. You don't speak. You leave as if you've just witnessed a crime, which, in a way, you have. Outside, the sun hits your face like a blessing. You inhale. It still smells like fish and dust and burning olive oil, but compared to the underworld you just escaped, it's ambrosia. You survived. For now. But the day is young, and Rome is not done with you yet. You shift on the cold stone, trying not to think about what's underneath. The air is warm, but not in a cozy way. It's thick and wet and smells like a fermented stable. You try to breathe through your mouth, which only makes things worse. Taste is not something you ever wanted associated with public defecation. To your left, a man you do not know is humming as he adjusts his tunic, his thigh dangerously close to yours. To your right, someone just made a noise that sounded like a dying goat. You do not dare look. You do not want to make eye contact with anyone. There is no such thing as privacy in a Roman toilet. No stalls, no walls. Just a long bench with 20 arched cutouts and too many feet tapping in anxiety or rhythm. The sponge stick, the infamous tersorium, is soaked and resting in a vinegar-filled trough, a single communal one. You try to recall if the vinegar is strong enough to kill disease. You try not to think about how many intestinal battles have been fought on this very seat. Fail. Miserably. Rats squeak somewhere near your ankles. One dashes out and disappears through a crack in the floor. You clutch your tunic higher. Your stomach churns not from illness, but from stress. You suddenly have great respect for your sphincter and its ability to lock up in times of terror. Above you, a mural depicts Bacchus mid-orgy. You wonder who chose that as toilet decor. Probably the same guy who thought it was a good idea to paint a lion eating a gladiator in the next room over. The Romans have a strange sense of humor, or maybe they just want you to hurry up and stop loitering. Someone sneezes behind you. There are no walls. You feel the particles pass like a phantom breeze. You flinch. Your whole body tenses. This is a sacred and vulnerable moment being shared with absolute strangers who are too comfortable making eye contact while squatting. There's no such thing as silence. Every few seconds, there's a splash or a grunt, or the unmistakable groan of someone who didn't make it in time. A boy walks in with a mop and a dead look in his eyes. He has accepted his fate. You almost admire him. You grip the edge of the stone for balance and try not to slip. The stone is polished, smooth by centuries of Roman butts, and you're not feeling particularly athletic today. You do not want to fall. Nobody wants to fall here. The consequences are psychological and irreversible. Outside, a vendor is selling fried dormice. You hear him shout the word crispy, and your gut clenches in confusion. Someone else lights incense nearby, probably in a last-ditch effort to preserve their soul. It mixes with the filth and becomes something worse, sweet rot. The person next to you asks for the sponge. You consider pretending not to hear. You hand it over with 2 fingers, like it's a cursed relic. He nods in thanks, completely unbothered. You wonder what level of apathy you must unlock to survive this kind of life. A bird lands on the windowsill. It stares at you. You wonder if it's judging you. It blinks once and flies off. That somehow feels worse than staying. Finally, your body cooperates. It's over. Or at least this stage is. Now comes the aftermath. The sponge is still damp. You whisper an apology to your ancestors as you use it, trying not to gag. You do not meet your own reflection in the polished bronze water trough. You rise, knees cracking, and adjust your tunic. Your legs feel numb. Your dignity is somewhere back there, possibly gnawed on by rats. You step carefully to avoid puddles of uncertain origin and nod politely to the next person entering, like this is a perfectly normal part of a perfectly normal day. You exit into the open air, blinking against the sunlight like you've just been reborn. The breeze hits you like a miracle. You never thought you'd be grateful for the stench of fish sauce and smoke, but here we are. It's better than what's behind you. You survived the Roman public toilet. Barely. And you will never be the same again. You haul urine. That's your job. Not glamorous, not noble, not even something most people make eye contact over. But the Fullers need it, and you need the coin. So you do it. You wake before dawn, grab your sloshing clay jars, and head out to collect the public's finest liquid gold. Every alleyway is a fresh opportunity, and every corner has a pot. Men relieve themselves half asleep. Women give you side eyes and plug their noses, but you nod, take the jar, and move on. The smell clings to you like a second tunic. You are a full-time piss collector in the heart of the empire. Rome, glorious Rome, where the streets are paved in marble if you're rich, and in something far softer and stickier if you're not. And you're not. You can barely afford sandals. Yours have been mended with twine and hope 3 times already. Each morning your feet get wetter. Each morning you tell yourself it's just due. even though dew doesn't usually bubble when it hits the ground. The Fullers pay you by the jar. They don't care how you get it. Rich man's villa or poor man's alley, it's all the same to them. They dunk stained tunics into vats of urine, stomp them clean like grapes, then hand the clothes back smelling just a little less like filth. Somehow, Rome calls it clean. You don't question it. You just hand over the jars, take your copper coins, and try not to think about the splash marks on your tunic. Then there's your second gig, because no one survives on one job, sweeping the forum, that sacred space where orators shout, statues glare, and pigeons conduct bombing runs from every column. You're there before the sun climbs over the rooftops, pushing a straw broom with more gaps than bristles. Horse dung, rotten fruit, spat out olive pits, and last night's political pamphlets all smear together into a mosaic of decay. You sweep it into heaps, then sweep those heaps into bigger heaps, until eventually someone carts it away. Probably someone like you. You get cursed at if you sweep too close to someone's sandals. You get cursed worse if you don't. One senator nearly hit you with a scroll because you made the air dusty. Another threw half a fig at your back when you stepped on his toga. He was lying on the steps, surrounded by admirers, and you had the goal to exist nearby, so he hurled fruit and missed. There's no shade in the forum either. Not for you. The sun bakes the stones, and the stones bake your souls. You dream of clouds, you dream of cool breezes. Mostly you dream of just once, not stepping in something soft and warm at 6 a.m. After the sweeping, you haul buckets. You don't know what's in them. Slop, wash water, something from a fishmonger. You don't ask. You carry. Up the hill, down the hill, into shops, and out again. Some shopkeepers nod. Some shout. One keeps calling you boy, even though you're older than his beard. Doesn't matter. You carry the bucket. You carry it. You empty it. You wipe your hands on your tunic and pretend you can still feel your fingers. At some point you realize you haven't eaten. Your stomach whines like a sick dog. You pull out a crust of barley bread from your pouch. It's hard enough to chip a tooth, but it's yours. You dunk it into water that smells like pipe moss, then chew like it's a gladiator fight, and your molars are the main contenders. You sit on a broken column while chewing. Your back screams. Your knees wobble. A fly lands on your nose. You're too tired to shoo it. You just close your eyes and let the sunlight press against your eyelids like a hot towel soaked in regret. Then comes the noise. Rome never shuts up. There's always shouting, always arguing, always the sound of something clanging, breaking, or being dragged. Two fishmongers scream at each other over stall space. A child sobs because his fig fell in the gutter. A cart tips over, and a pig escapes. You watch it all, but only through the haze of fatigue that turns chaos into background music. You spot another worker sweeping a different stretch of stones. You nod at each other, comrades in grime. He's missing 3 fingers. You try not to think about how that happened. Probably something with a mule, or a careless knife, or maybe the gods just decided he looked too symmetrical. Once your break is over, it's back to the pits. There's a new latrine in the market quarter, and they need someone to manage it. That's code for standing nearby with a stick, poking at things that shouldn't be there, and trying not to vomit from the stench. You try. You really do. But by the end of your shift, you've dry heaved 4 times, sneezed something unholy into your sleeve, and seriously considered moving to Gaul. But you don't. You stay in Rome, because this is your home. Your crumbling tenement, your piss jars, your fig-stained sandals, your aching knees. This is the heart of the empire, and it beats to the rhythm of feet on cobblestones, curses in the morning, and 1,000 jobs no one wants to do. And you do them all. One slop bucket at a time. You barely had time to cough up the stench from the last errand before you're handed another. A merchant points to a trail of fish guts smeared across the paving stones. "Clean it," he grunts, not even looking at you. You don't even have a proper broom, just a palm fiber brush that's balding like a senator. So you stoop again and begin smearing the slime into a wet stain that smells like it died twice. The sun climbs, your sweat thickens, and every corner of your tunic clings to your skin like it resents you for existing. Someone drops an amphora of spoiled olive oil near the baths. You're called to handle it. The smell is rich, rotten, and acidic enough to make your eyes water. A patrician walks past, pinching his nose with a silk cloth, as if it might save him from your reality. His sandals are embroidered. Yours are frayed. His skin is clean. Yours is streaked with filth that's not all your own. You don't stop working. If you stop, someone else will take your place and your daily bread with it. Even slaves have tasks that might be easier than yours, but at least you aren't whipped. Not usually. Not unless you make a scene or drop something expensive. You make a game out of seeing how long you can go without gagging, or how quickly you can finish before your back locks up again. Today's goal? Try to survive without puking on yourself. The forum is loud, as always. Senators argue about things that don't affect you. Philosophers preach to bored students. You catch one talking about virtue as you scrub pigeon droppings off a marble statue of some forgotten war god. You wonder if the god minds. You certainly do. It's midday when you're assigned to the public latrines for a quick inspection. You know what that really means. Someone clogged a drain again, and you're the tool. You step into the damp, echoing chamber and immediately regret breathing. Warm wastewater seeps through your sandals. You avoid looking directly at the flowing channel, because last time you did, you saw something float by with teeth. There's a stick with a sponge on it left behind. You don't touch it, not even with gloves. You jab a rod into the clogged hole and stir until something finally shifts with a gurgle. You take a step back just in time to avoid a splash that would have ended your day early. A rat squeaks, dashes over your foot, and vanishes into a wall crack. You try not to scream. You leave the latrine a changed person. Not improved, just different. Altered on a molecular level. You smell worse. You feel worse. You are worse. And there's still half a day left to survive. A child runs by and kicks dust onto your clean sandals. You scowl. He grins. Somewhere down the alley, a butcher pours pig blood into a gutter and it sloshes toward your feet. You jump away, but not fast enough. Red streaks the hem of your tunic, which already looked like a punishment. Your next task? Haul the waste from the Phylonica to the disposal ditch outside the Sabura. You balance 2 sloshing buckets of urine on a yoke across your shoulders. Every step is a test of core strength and mental stability. The smell rises in hot waves. You pass a woman selling flowers who glares at you like you just insulted Jupiter. You don't blame her. By the time you reach the ditch, your arms are trembling and your nose has shut down in protest. You dump the buckets and try not to look too closely at what else is floating there. Bits of fabric, a shoe, a finger maybe. You don't want to know. Back at the Phylonica, a man covered in soapline nods at you. You're late, he says, as if time runs differently for him. He hands you another load of rags and points at the scrubbing basin. You roll up your sleeves and start again. Your hands burn from the chemical stew. Cuts from earlier reopen. You wonder how long until they fester. The sun has shifted lower now, casting long shadows between buildings that feel closer every day. Your knees pop every time you squat, and your spine feels like someone tried to sculpt it with a hammer. The only thing keeping you upright is the knowledge that you'll get a scrap of bread and a few sips of wine when this is over. Maybe. By the time the last rag is scrubbed and the last insult muttered under breath, you are no longer human. You are grime incarnate. You shuffle back to the tenement with your hands coated in sour soap, your feet blistered, and your brain tuned to one word: rest. A neighbor calls out from a window. Work hard. Stink harder, he says with a laugh. You pretend to chuckle. You don't have the energy to argue. You climb the stairs to your floor, each step wobblier than the last. At the door, you pause. The thought crosses your mind. Is it worth it? Tomorrow, it will all happen again. The filth, the stench, the unending cycle of tasks that chip away at your soul like water on stone. But you open the door anyway, step inside, and collapse onto your lumpy straw mattress. It squeaks like it's mocking you. You lie there in silence, limbs twitching, eyelids heavy. And even though your whole body begs for sleep, your nose still twitches from the stink. Somewhere nearby, someone is cooking spoiled cabbage again. You sigh, grateful, only for one thing. At least today, you didn't get bit. You walk into the baths, thinking maybe today will be different. Maybe you'll finally feel clean. Maybe you'll come out refreshed, lighter, ready to take on another round of hauling amphorae for a man who calls you boy, even though you're pushing 40. But no. The moment you step into the tepidarium, you know you were wrong. The air inside is thick with sweat, oil, garlic breath, and something that smells like fish guts left in a boot. The floor is a slippery mosaic of water, grime, and occasional mystery chunks. You skid. Everyone skids. It's part of the charm, or so they say. No one ever warns you about the toe fungus parade lurking in the corners, or the man in the corner with a cough that's lasted longer than the current emperor. You start by stripping. No changing rooms. Just peel it off right there, and try not to make eye contact with the man who's been staring since you entered. The slave boy grabs your clothes and throws them into a pile of other equally pitiful tunics that all smell like vinegar and crushed hope. You don't even try to keep track of which one is yours. It's communal now. The first room is the tepidarium, the warm room. You sit on the stone bench, and it immediately steals the warmth from your bones. The man next to you sighs like he's about to confess to murder. Another one is clipping his toenails with a knife. You try not to look, you fail. One nail goes flying. It lands near your foot. You pretend it didn't happen. A man across from you is already sweating buckets, even though he's been here for 2 minutes. He's lathering himself in oil like he's preparing for battle. You follow suit. The slave boy hands you a small flask of olive oil. You rub it onto your arms, your chest, your legs, wondering which parts need it the most and which parts are already a lost cause. Then comes the strigil, a dull metal scraper that's been used by at least 4 other people before you. It has someone else's hair stuck in it. You scrape anyway. Because this is Rome, and personal boundaries died with the Republic, you slide the strigil down your arm and it pulls off a layer of grime, oil, and regret. It also tugs at a mole you weren't sure was still attached. The man next to you offers to scrape your back. His smile says friendly, but his hands say rough carpenter. You let him do it because scraping your own back is impossible unless you're double-jointed or desperate. Which, to be fair, most people here are. Now, it's time for the caldarium, the hot room. Steam rolls out like it's trying to escape. You step in and immediately regret every decision that led to this moment. The room is hotter than Vulcan's forge, and you're sweating from your earlobes. The floor is scalding, the walls are sweating, but one wrong breath away from passing out. There's a vat of hot water in the center. People are half sitting, half floating in it, like dumplings that forgot to die with dignity. You lower yourself in and try not to cry. The water burns. Not just hot, it sears. You hold your breath and sit perfectly still because movement causes splashing, and splashing causes eye contact. Nobody wants that. Then someone farts, loudly. A few people chuckle. One man leaves the room, another just sinks deeper into the water, presumably to escape both the smell and his life choices. You glance around. There's a banker rubbing his belly with a loofah that looks like it was woven by angry spiders. A senator is muttering to himself, possibly planning to outlaw the concept of modesty altogether. You try to focus on the tiles. Some are beautiful. Most are cracked. One has a toenail stuck between the grout. A slave walks by with a bucket. He dumps it into the water. You try not to wonder what was in it. You fail again. The answer is likely pee because the man across from you looks very relieved and hasn't moved in 5 minutes. You think maybe it's time to rinse off and leave, but that would require standing, and standing means everyone sees everything. Again, you gather your courage, stand, and make your way to the Frigidarium. The cold plunge. A cruel joke, really. You just spent 20 minutes in a hot box being boiled alive, only to now dive into ice water like a punished gladiator. You lower yourself slowly. The water bites. Your skin contracts. Your regrets become clearer. Your teeth chatter before you even sit down. The man next to you is doing breathing exercises. You do not know if he is meditating or trying not to scream. Either way, you admire his commitment. Once the cold finishes insulting your bloodstream, you climb out. You're not cleaner, just damp and confused. Your towel is missing. Someone else took it. You consider fighting him for it, but decide to drip dry instead. The air outside is less humid, but carries the scent of human stew. Your clothes are not where you left them. You find a tunic that kind of fits and hope nobody notices. You smell like oil, ash, and cooked skin. You feel lighter, but not in a good way. Like your soul has been scraped out with the rest of the dirt. You walk out into the Roman streets again, blinking against the harsh daylight. Somewhere a hawker is selling salted fish, and the smell punches you in the face. You consider going back into the baths to escape it, but then you remember the toenail, number never again. You move along, slightly damp, slightly dizzy, and entirely Roman. You think you're done. You think you've endured the Roman bathhouse rite of passage, but Rome isn't done with you, not by a long shot. You shuffle over to the massage room. A thick man with arms the size of amphorae greets you with a nod and a slap on the back that relocates 2 vertebrae. He's covered in olive oil and pride. He doesn't speak, just grunts and points to a slab of stone that smells like it's absorbed 1,000 years of sweat and goat cheese. You lie down. The slab is cold, but your body's too sore to flinch anymore. The masseur begins with your shoulders, kneading like he's trying to tenderize a stubborn cut of meat. You try not to scream. You fail. He takes it as encouragement and digs deeper. You hear a pop that might be your spine or your willpower snapping in two. Next is your lower back. He straddles you without warning. His knee jams into your tailbone like he's chasing demons out. He mutters something about knots. You want to tell him they're part of your personality now. Instead, you groan into the stone and try not to cry. A rat scurries across the far wall, even it looks like it pities you. The massage ends when he punches both shoulder blades and shouts, "Finito." You don't know if that's Roman protocol or a personal flourish. Either way, you roll off the table like wet laundry and stagger toward the exit. But the ordeal isn't complete until you pass through the perfume corridor. Tiny vials of scented oil line the walls. You're offered one sniff, just one. It smells like old roses and rich people's secrets. You reach for a dab, and the attendant slaps your hand away. No touching, just smelling. This is luxury, not charity. Outside, the sun has dipped low, casting long shadows across the cobblestones. Your body feels 3 inches shorter. Your joints click when you breathe. But the worst part? You're still not clean. The grime has just moved, redistributed like taxes. Now it's under your toenails, inside your ears, and lurking somewhere between your shoulder blades like a ghost of bathhouse past. You limp away, the scent of ancient armpits clinging to your hair. A boy sells roasted chestnuts on the corner. You consider buying one, but remember, you have no money left. You spent your last sestertius tipping the slave boy who found your sandal in the caldarium. You pass an alley. Someone's vomiting. Someone else is laughing. This is Rome, the city of aqueducts, blood sport, and very personal hygiene rituals. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. Because no matter how terrible the baths are, they beat, smelling like fermented ox. Just barely. The market is already screaming when you arrive. Not the people, though they're loud too. It's the smells. The kind of smells that punch you in the face with fish, guts, goat breath, and old vinegar that gave up long ago. Vendors shout prices, some of them in Latin, others in dialects you've never heard, and possibly a few in curses. You blink against the sun. It reflects off the scales of dead mackerel like a divine insult. The fish are displayed on planks soaked through with melted ice and yesterday's slime. They glisten in the wrong way, soft around the edges, cloudy in the eyes. One flops slightly. You hope it's the wind. To your left, a woman is selling herbs. Basil, thyme, and something that might be wormwood if you squint. She waves a branch at you like a weapon and hisses something about your aura. You walk faster. The butcher's stall is worse. Pigs, alive and furious, are tied by their back legs and screaming into the void. One of them catches your eye. You both understand each other. He's not making it out of here alive, and you might not either. A row of animal heads lines the butcher's slab. Their tongues loll out like they're mocking your haircut. You look away. You step in something soft. You don't ask questions, that's the Roman rule. If it squishes and it isn't screaming, move on. Fruit vendors gesture with orange-stained hands. The peaches look tempting until you see the hornet nest nestled in one of the baskets. You pretend you weren't interested anyway. You try the next stand, hoping for vegetables. Instead, you're met with amphorae stacked like a ceramic death trap. One is leaking something red. You pray it's wine. It isn't. The cheesemonger offers a sample. You take a bite. It crunches. There shouldn't be a crunch. The man smiles with 3 teeth and tells you it's aged. You wonder if he means the cheese or the rat that died in it. Either way, you nod politely and back away. A child runs past you holding a squid. You don't know why. Nobody seems to be chasing him. The squid might still be alive. You mind your own business. You finally spot the turnip vendor. Old, slouched, and dressed in a tunic that's seen every Caesar from Augustus to whoever's pretending to rule now. He smells like pickled socks. You ask the price. He says 2 sestertii. You offer 1. He doesn't argue. Instead, he picks up a live eel and swings it like a whip in your direction. The eel smacks into a hanging sausage and coils around it like a snake claiming a prize. You pay the 2 sestertii. He throws the turnips at your feet like they insulted his mother. You shuffle toward the edge of the market, clutching your bruised vegetables like war trophies. A man tries to sell you a pigeon in a sack. Another offers you a cursed ring. You nod, like you're considering it, then escape, while they argue over who owns the donkey tethered to a pile of bricks. The Forum is only a few streets away, but it smells better already. Which is saying something, considering someone nearby is relieving themselves against a marble statue of Jupiter. The urine steams in the sun. You do not make eye contact. A group of philosophers is arguing about stoicism in the shade. One of them is barefoot and angry. You slow down to listen, hoping for wisdom or at least entertainment. Instead, you hear a rant about figs and moral decay. You move on. The market fades behind you, but its stench clings to your clothes. Your sandals are coated in mystery goo. Your stomach regrets the cheese. And the turnips? They're probably fine. Probably. You sigh. Rome feeds you, robs you, assaults your senses, and dares you to complain. And you'll be back at the market tomorrow. Because no matter how bad it gets, it's still better than starving. You keep walking past stalls that look more like open wounds than places of business. One old woman is selling cheese, though calling it that feels generous. It's a sweaty, oozing lump resting on a filthy board swarming with flies that don't even pretend to be bothered when you wave them away. She offers you a sliver with a toothless grin and says it's from a good goat. You believe her. That goat probably died last week. You pass a cart that's full of mystery meat. The vendor claims it's lamb. It looks more like raccoon, or possibly something with opposable thumbs. You do not ask questions. Asking questions in this market is like begging for curses to be hurled at you in 4 dialects at once. You spot some grapes. They look shriveled, dusty, but edible. You reach out. A child beats you to it and grabs the bunch. You glare at him. He sticks his tongue out. Somewhere deep inside, You wish the grapes are sour and his afternoon is ruined. That's as close as you get to justice in this place. You think about buying meat again. There's a man roasting some over a fire. The smoke makes your eyes sting and your stomach grumble, which is probably how he lures people in. You approach, trying to ignore the puddle of something below the spit. The meat turns slowly, glistening with grease and ashes. It smells incredible. He cuts you a slice and wraps it in cabbage. You hand over your coins, take one bite and immediately regret every decision that led you here. It is not lamb, it is not beef, it might be rat, and not the clean, well-fed ones you sometimes see near the baths. The greasy texture clings to your tongue like betrayal. But you chew, because spitting it out would be wasteful and disrespectful to the possibly sentient creature that gave its life for this disaster. You look for olives next. You don't even like olives, but at least you know what they are. You find a barrel brimming with black ones that glisten like beetles. The vendor insists they are fresh. You point out the mold floating on top. He shrugs and says it's just flavor. You buy 3? You pass by a wine vendor next. He is shouting in Latin and Greek at the same time, promising the best vintage from the Alban Hills. You know he's lying. Everyone knows he's lying. But people are buying anyway because the wine is cheap, and people here are thirsty for anything that numbs. You sip a sample. It tastes like vinegar and regret, but it burns just enough to clean your throat of the market stench. You buy a cup and down it quickly. The man tries to sell you a second. You decline, mostly because you fear your insides might stage a revolt if you drink any more. At one end of the market, a man is selling amphorae. He claims they're imported from Carthage. You know they're local, because the clay still smells like the Tiber. But they're cheap, and you need something to carry the olives and mystery cheese. You buy one, and instantly regret it. The amphora has a crack, and everything leaks a little as you walk. Your tunic is now wet with olive brine and spoiled dairy. No one notices. Everyone else looks the same, or worse. One man is wearing a basket for a hat. Another is arguing with a chicken. A woman is threatening to curse someone's entire bloodline over a handful of rotten leeks. You make your way toward the forum, passing street performers who juggle, dance, or scream poetry at passers-by. A man with painted skin pretends to be a statue. A dog urinates on his foot. He does not flinch. You respect the commitment. You step over a beggar. He asks for coins. You pretend not to hear, then you feel bad and double back, tossing him a stale end of your bread. He thanks you like you handed him gold. You feel worse. The smells follow you. Rot, sweat, incense, and the faint whiff of something baking that smells almost like cake until you realize it is just a burned onion on flatbread. Finally, you exit the market. Your arms ache. Your feet are sore. You've spent half your coin and acquired nothing you actually wanted. But you lived. You made it through the Roman market, which is more than can be said for the eel that vendor was using as a whip. And somehow, impossibly, you were already hungry again. You knew you shouldn't have eaten that pigeon. It looked suspicious when it stopped twitching so quickly, and the bread it came with crunched in ways that felt medically concerning. But you were hungry, and in ancient Rome, hunger isn't a passing feeling, it's the baseline. Now, hours later, your stomach has turned into a festival of cramps, burps, and ominous gurgles. It feels like someone poured sour wine into your guts and lit a torch. You double over in the alley behind your tenement, clutching your abdomen like that'll somehow keep the toxins from spreading. A neighbor walks by, glares, and tosses a half-eaten fig at your feet, muttering something about weak-bellied foreigners. You need a doctor. That is, someone who calls himself a doctor. The closest one is 4 streets down, between the bathhouse and a shrine dedicated to Mercury. His door is a curtain that smells like mildew, and above it hangs a wooden plaque that reads Medicus in shaky red paint. You push it aside and step into a room that smells like garlic, sweat, and old meat. The doctor is asleep in a chair, snoring with his mouth wide open and one sandal off. You clear your throat, he doesn't stir. You stomp, nothing. Finally, you knock over a jar of dried leeches by accident, and the sudden wet slap on the floor makes him jolt upright. He squints at you through eyes clouded with wine or age, possibly both, and says, "You look pale. Sit." You sit on a stool that has one short leg and wobbles like your faith in this man's qualifications. He doesn't ask questions. He doesn't even ask what's wrong. He just walks over to a shelf, grabs a cloth bag, and dumps its contents into a bowl. It's a chaotic blend of crushed insects, dried flowers, chunks of something grey and fibrous, and a small cracked walnut. He crushes it with a rock, not a mortar and pestle, a literal rock. Then he stirs in something from a clay jug. It smells like rotting vinegar mixed with mint and despair. "Drink this," he says, pushing the sludge toward you. You hesitate. He narrows his eyes. You want to feel better or not? So you drink. It's thick and tastes like sour mud mixed with burnt parsley and wet straw. You gag halfway through, but he pats your back and says, "That means it's working." The cramps don't stop. Your stomach now feels like it's both boiling and freezing. Your left eye twitches. The doctor watches you with mild interest, then starts humming a tune while cleaning his ear with a quill. "Lie down," he says. "I'll bleed you next." "Wait, what?" you croak. "You got fever in your guts. Need to let the bad blood out." Before you can protest, he's already unrolling a leather kit with knives that haven't been cleaned since Caesar had hair. Some are rusted. One has a chunk missing. Another looks more like a fish hook than a blade. You consider running, but standing feels dangerous, so you lie down on a slab that might once have been a butcher's table. He ties a strip of cloth around your arm and begins tapping your veins like he's looking for a ripe fruit. "Found it," he mutters. He pricks you with a blade that bites deeper than you expect. Blood trickles out, and he catches it in a cracked bowl, nodding like a proud father. "Good color," he says, "means your spleen is angry." You ask how long this will take. He shrugs. "Till you faint or your complexion improves." You start to sweat. Meanwhile, a woman bursts into the room carrying a baby with a rash. She demands attention, waving the infant like a loaf of proof. The doctor doesn't flinch. He holds your bowl of blood in one hand and gestures with the other. Wrap the baby in cabbage leaves. If he still cries, feed him goat's milk and burn the rash with sulfur. The woman leaves without questioning a word. You're starting to feel lightheaded. The blood is still dripping, your stomach is still churning, and now your vision is going fuzzy around the edges. The doctor finally wipes your arm with what smells like wine-soaked linen, ties it off, and hands you a hunk of hard bread. "For strength," he says, "and chew on this." He hands you a clove of garlic the size of a baby's fist, cleanses bad breath and demons. You ask how much you owe. 2 sesterces, he replies. You only have 1. He takes it, along with your belt. Insurance, he explains. In case you come back dead. You stumble out into the sunlight, feeling half empty and a little violated. The alley smells worse now, or maybe it's you. You wobble past a cat licking blood from a butcher's slab, and wonder if this is what healing feels like in Rome. Closer to torture than care, more guesswork than science. Your stomach growls again, or maybe that's your spleen. Either way, you're out 1 coin, 1 pint of blood, and 1 belt. And you're still not sure if you're getting better or just slightly more historic. You stagger home, clutching a cloth pouch filled with dried bat wings, salt, and what looks suspiciously like powdered brick. The doctor insisted it would cure your insomnia. You're more worried about what it will do to your kidneys. He was quite proud, though, claiming he once used the same remedy on a man who dreamed of snakes and never dreamed again. That was apparently a success. Your neighbor leans out her window and asks how your treatment went. You say, "He gave me something to sniff, and then slapped me with a cabbage leaf." She nods like this makes sense. Maybe it does. Maybe the entire city is in on a joke you're too tired to understand. Later that night, the pain returns. You try the bat wing dust. You sneeze hard enough to wake the dog. Your vision swims for a bit, and you're pretty sure one of your toes just went numb. You lie down on the creaky cot, wondering if this is what healing feels like in Rome. The next day, you return to complain. The doctor isn't in. His assistant, a 14-year-old boy with a lazy eye, offers to examine you. He says he trained under the doctor himself. You say, "How long?" He says, "Since Tuesday. It is Wednesday." You decline the examination and walk out. The walk back home feels longer, probably because you're limping now. By mid-afternoon, you hear about a new doctor down the road. He's just arrived from Egypt and claims to use real science. You give it a shot. His clinic smells like incense and lispid. He has a beard that's been braided into 3 separate curls and a robe that sweeps the ground like it's performing a ritual. He looks at your swollen leg and hums. Then he lights a candle, pours goat milk into a brass bowl, and watches the bubbles. You ask what he's doing. He says, "Listening." You ask what he hears. He says, "You'll live." If that's good. He shrugs. Next, he gives you a charm made of twisted iron and chicken bone. "Wear this while you sleep," he says, "and eat only white foods." You ask what counts as white. He says, "Things the gods can see clearly." You give up. Back at home, you try to follow the advice. You eat boiled onion, garlic, and what you think is stale goat cheese. It all tastes the same. Salty, sour, and faintly hopeless. You hang the charm by your bed. You do not sleep. In the middle of the night, your leg starts twitching. Not pain exactly, just a strange rhythm, like it's doing a dance you don't remember learning. You stare at the ceiling and wonder if this is the beginning of death, or just another Tuesday in Rome. The next morning, your friend says his cousin is an herbalist. She works out of a cart near the circus. You find her between a pie seller and a man who trains fleas. She has a necklace made of walnut shells and eyes like burnt honey. You explain your symptoms. She nods, spits into a jar, and tells you to drink it. You walk away instead. Later, someone recommends you visit the temple of Aesculapius, supposedly the god of healing. People sleep on stone floors in hopes the god will appear in their dreams and tell them what to do. You decide, why not? At this point, a hallucination might be the most qualified professional you've seen. You arrive at dusk, clutching a blanket and your last shred of dignity. The floor is cold. The man beside you is coughing so hard it echoes. Someone else is muttering prayers under their breath. You close your eyes and wait. You dream of a snake wearing a crown. It tells you to drink more water. When you wake, you have no idea if that was divine wisdom or dehydration. In the morning, a priest asks if the god spoke to you. You nod. He blesses your feet and gives you a sprig of thyme. You go home and boil it into a tea. It tastes like dust. You still feel terrible, but now you're terrible with a spiritual endorsement. Days pass. The swelling in your leg goes down. Maybe because of time, maybe because you stopped showing up at clinics that double as gambling dens. Or maybe the time worked. Who knows? The only consistent advice you get is from an old ex-legionary who tells you to stop whining, eat garlic, and punch the wall until you feel better. You don't try it, but you appreciate the clarity. Eventually, you stop seeking treatment. Not because you're cured, but because you're exhausted. Roman medicine has left you bruised, baffled, and possibly more ill than when you started. You accept that in this city, survival is not about science or spirits. It's about patience, and occasionally, luck. You sit at the edge of your cot and wiggle your toes, still there, still twitching, still Roman. And for now, that'll do. You try to keep your head down. That was the plan. You woke up hoping to fetch some olives, maybe haggle for figs, maybe avoid getting spit on, but Rome doesn't care about your plans. Rome is loud. Rome is angry. And Rome has an election coming up. You step into the forum thinking it's still early. Big mistake. The stone slabs are already vibrating with noise. Two groups of men in tunics are screaming across the plaza, waving crude signs on sticks and gesturing wildly with clay amphorae that were clearly not meant for throwing. You squint and realize one of them is your cousin. Or maybe your cousin's friend. Either way, he spots you. He grins. He runs over and slaps a wreath on your head. It smells like last week's anchovy sauce. "Citizen!" he yells in your face. "You look like you support Tullius. You are a Tullian, aren't you?" You try to say no, but now a group is surrounding you, patting your back like you've just won a chariot race. Someone hands you a torch. Another guy presses a wooden plank into your palm that says something about lowering grain taxes. Before you know it, you're swept into a marching line of barefoot protesters chanting in half-synchronized rage. A merchant tries to push his stall out of the way and spills dried fish all over the road. You trip over a leg of goat and end up shoulder to shoulder with a man who smells like boiled snails and is missing most of his teeth. "For the people," he shouts. You nod weakly. A tomato flies past your ear and bursts on a marble pillar. You flinch, he laughs. "It's not a real rally until someone gets hit with produce," he says, completely unbothered. Everywhere you look, the air is thick with dust, sweat, and political slogans shouted in Latin, so mangled even Cicero would weep. One group is waving banners with a poorly painted eagle. Another is carrying a statue of a naked candidate. The third just chants, "Bread, bread, bread," as they pelt random passers-by with crusts. You duck into an alley, but you're not safe there either. A man with ink-stained hands is plastering the walls with flyers that read like threats disguised as poetry. "Vote for Severus, or the gods will know." You ask if he's with the Severus campaign. He spits on the cobblestones and mutters something about senatorial cowards before vanishing around the corner with a bag full of bribes. Probably dates, maybe coins, or poisoned olives. Just as you're catching your breath, a man in a purple-bordered toga strides past, flanked by bodyguards with clubs. Someone boos, someone cheers, someone throws a dead pigeon. It hits the guard, who doesn't flinch. The politician stops, smiles, and makes a sweeping gesture to the crowd, who respond with a mix of applause and fart noises. You try to walk away. The gods laugh. A fistfight breaks out near the steps of the basilica. Someone accuses someone else of sleeping with a Vestal Virgin. Someone else shouts about taxes. Someone throws a cabbage. It's unclear if it was symbolic or just lunch. You find yourself pinned against a column by a crowd of very loud men arguing about sewage reform. You try to slide away. "Hey," one of them grabs your tunic. "You got a stance on aqueduct pressure limits?" You mumble that you prefer baths. He scowls like you just insulted his ancestors, and then shouts, "This one's undecided! Convert him!" Suddenly you're being lectured by 3 different voices about water, morals, and why one candidate's haircut is a sign of moral weakness. Eventually, you escape by pretending to have a nosebleed. You stagger toward the statue of Jupiter in the center of the forum. A little old woman blocks your path, slaps your arm, and hisses, "You better not vote for Emilius. His uncle cheated at dice." You nod. You smile. You are terrified. A trumpet blares, not metaphorically, an actual trumpet. And now an official crier is standing atop a crate, reading campaign promises at full volume. You only catch every other word. Lower bread costs, build another bath, arrest the fortune tellers, double wine rations. The crowd cheers at the last one. A man near you starts weeping with joy. By noon, the forum looks like a battlefield. Mules with painted slogans clop through the crowd. Young boys hand out coins from sacks marked civic donations. Someone is roasting a pig on a spit painted with a candidate's name. The skin crackles, the smell is glorious, and you wonder if political pork counts as a bribe. You take a piece anyway. A bearded man grabs your shoulder. "Can you read?" he asks. You nod, he grins. "Then read this," and shoves a scroll into your chest. It's 10 feet long and rhymes terribly. Every line ends with the name Lucius. You try to hand it back, but he's already gone. You find yourself herded toward the temple steps. A crowd has formed around a speaker with a booming voice. You think the Empire runs itself? He yells. You think the gods care who wins? No, but I do, and you should too, the crowd roars. You join in out of fear. By now, you are sunburned, olive oil stained, trampled, half converted to 3 different political causes, and somehow signed up to guard a statue later tonight. You have no idea which statue, and you still haven't bought those figs. You're just trying to escape. That's all. Maybe duck down a side street, grab a flatbread, and find a little shade where no one's yelling. But that's not how Rome works. No alley is quiet, no vendor is impartial, and even the statues seem to have a political stance. You stumble past a mural that someone freshly painted with "Vote for Flavius." It's already been defaced. Someone scribbled donkey ears on Flavius and wrote "likes lukewarm wine" beneath it. Scandalous. Further down, another mural hails Lucanus as protector of the grain, but someone's added a drawing of him stepping on a loaf of bread. Rome's version of satire, painted in public, never subtle. A crowd forms near the basilica, not a peaceful one. Red-faced orators shout from the steps, flanked by teenage boys holding banners like weapons. You try to sneak through, but a man with wild eyes and missing teeth yanks your arm and asks if you're voting for Cassius. You don't know who Cassius is. He screams and calls you a traitor to the Republic. You nod and pretend to care until he lets go. Someone tosses fermented cabbage into the fray. It splatters on a toga. Shouts erupt. Now it's not a rally, it's a mob. You press against a wall and feel your ribs compress under the weight of 4 panicking bodies. You lose a sandal. You lose your dignity. You keep your life only because someone else takes a harder punch. A flute player tries to restore calm. No one hears him. An old woman throws a sandal at a senator's nephew. Someone hurls a pigeon cage into the air. The pigeons refuse to fly. By the time you crawl out of the square, your tunic is streaked with garum. Your face is pink from sun and shame, and your hair smells like sour barley. You try to speak to a merchant for directions, but he only raises an eyebrow and mutters about tourists. The city doesn't slow down. Not for arguments, not for injuries, certainly not for you. Rome moves like a stampede of goats, noisy, unbothered, and a little bit insane. The baker's boy nearly runs you over delivering burned loaves to a senator's estate. A slave drops a bucket from a 3rd floor. It misses you by a fig's width. You keep walking. You pass another forum. This one's smaller, but no quieter. Rich men debate philosophy here, loudly and with spit flying. A man wearing rings on every finger rants about stoicism while chewing olives. He says, "Pain is just perception." You believe him until you step on a broken tile and yelp. He laughs. Pain, it turns out, is also comedy. A few soldiers march past. They don't stop the chaos. They don't even look twice. You wonder what their job actually is, because maintain order clearly isn't on the list. One of them is picking at his teeth with a chicken bone. Another is dozing while standing. They move in rhythm like ducks in a parade. You round a corner and run straight into a parade of Vestal virgins. They glide like ghosts, faces unreadable, guarded by stern priests who eyeball you like you're about to defile the sacred air. You back away slowly. One of them drops a flower. You pick it up. A priest snatches it from your hand and hisses that it's for Vesta only. You apologize. He doesn't care. Further along, a man stands on a barrel shouting about taxes. He says the Republic is corrupt, that the aqueducts are broken on purpose, that the Senate eats too many peaches while children starve. No one listens except a dog and one guy chewing on a chicken foot. The angry man eventually falls off the barrel. Nobody helps him up. At the fountain, a child throws coins into the water and prays for a calmer Rome. Another child immediately jumps in and steals the coins. You watch this happen and question every civic value you've ever been taught. An old man next to you shrugs and says, "That's politics." As the sun starts to set, the streets finally ease, the shouting quiets, the banners flutter in tired silence. You find a bench and sit. A donkey tied nearby looks at you with what feels like sympathy. Or maybe judgment. Hard to say with donkeys. Then you hear it. One final voice yelling about a candidate's illegitimate children. You sigh so deeply your bones shift. You want peace, Rome wants drama. You want rest. Rome gives you slogans and fig-stained tunics. You stand, the bench creaks in relief. By the time you make it home, the voices still echo in your ears. Politics here isn't seasonal, it's constant, relentless, loud enough to keep the dead up, and you're not even a citizen. You're just trying to survive. But survival in ancient Rome means learning to chant when they chant, to duck when they throw, and to always walk fast when someone says, "Do you support?" with their eyes too wide. Because in this city, silence isn't golden, it's suspicious. You lean on the doorframe, clutching your stomach, trying not to bring back up everything you just forced down. Your host peeks out and chuckles like this is all part of the Roman charm. You nod and wipe your mouth with the edge of your tunic. You can still feel that honey cake crawling in your throat. Your neighbor pats your back with the enthusiasm of a man trying to dislodge a chicken bone. "Strong flavor, eh?" he says. You nod again. You're not sure you remember how to speak. Your tongue feels like it's been scraped clean and dipped in vinegar. Inside, the conversation rages on. Someone is reenacting a gladiator fight, using a wooden spoon and a hunk of bread. The host's cousin, now several goblets deep into whatever that wine was, is heckling the performer and throwing fig pits at the wall. A slave quietly cleans it all up behind him without blinking. You wonder what it's like to have so little choice and so much chaos. The smell inside the dining room has shifted. Someone brought out a platter of roasted eel, and now the room is thick with brine and garlic. The eel is still twitching slightly. One man cheers and stabs it with a fork, declaring it fresh enough. You shudder. You consider sneaking away, but the hostess calls your name and waves you back to the cushion. Your legs carry you like they've signed a truce with your pride. You sit down, try not to inhale, and accept the next course. Boiled lentils. They look innocent. They are not. The texture is off. Somehow both undercooked and mushy. You chew slowly, wondering how lentils can taste burnt and raw at the same time. A man to your left says something about how they cleanse the humors. You're starting to believe they summon them instead. The wine keeps flowing. Your stomach growls in protest, unsure whether to digest or rebel. A piece of crusty bread arrives, dusted in what might be ash. You bite down and feel a snap. A stone. Another one. Your teeth are going to mutiny. Someone says, "Bread filler, cheaper than flour." You want to cry. The host proposes a toast. Everyone raises their cups and shouts something in Latin you only half understand. You say it too. Then you regret it. The vibration of speaking sends the wine sloshing inside you, mixing dangerously with dormouse and despair. By now, the slaves are clearing the plates, wiping down tables, and brushing crumbs onto the floor. One bends to pick up a spoon and makes the mistake of meeting your eyes. There's a flicker of pity, or maybe amusement. Either way, it burns. A flute player returns for an encore, this time with a goatskin drum. The rhythm is chaotic. You think it's a love song, or a warning. The crowd claps along anyway. A man gets up and dances. His toga slips. No one blinks. You fake a yawn. Mention something about early work in the morning. Your host insists you stay. You say it's a matter of religious duty. He backs off. You're grateful for the gods. Outside, the air is sour and warm, but it's yours. You breathe in like it's the finest incense. Somewhere nearby, a dog is howling at the moon or at indigestion, you relate. You limp home, hand on your belly like it might fall off. The dormouse is still winning. The honey cake is planning a sequel. You swear never to accept a dinner invitation again, but you will. Because this is Rome, and survival means smiling through the meal and praying the gods are too distracted to notice your suffering. You try not to breathe through your nose as you tear another hunk from your bread. The crust is rock hard, and it takes effort to chew without cracking a tooth. Your jaw aches by the fourth bite, but it's better than what your neighbor just offered you: boiled cow's udder in vinegar. Apparently it's a delicacy. Apparently they also hate you. You glance around the room and realize nobody is really eating. They're pecking at their food, sniffing suspicious items, passing bowls of pickled turnips and salted eel back and forth like they're playing hot potato with culinary failure. The stew has cooled into a lumpy, oily sludge, and the mystery meat floats on top like a dare. The wine at least is tolerable. It's still sour, of course, and watered down to the point of sadness, but it's room temperature and mildly numbing. That's all you need right now. You sip and let the haze settle, hoping it dulls your awareness of the chewy gristle clinging to your molars. Across the table, a man in his 40s with a huge scar running across his cheek begins a long story about how he once faked food poisoning to avoid eating stuffed pig rectum at a governor's banquet. It's not clear whether the punchline is that he didn't get away with it or that he married the governor's daughter afterward. Either way, nobody laughs. They just nod, solemnly, as if to say, yes, we have all suffered. Your host gestures toward a new dish-roasted bird of some kind. It's the size of a fist and still has tiny claws attached. Its beady little eyes stare upward, like it died offended. You fake a cough and look the other way. The room grows hotter, not from food, but from the collective shame of pretending this is normal. The candles flicker, sending melted wax down onto the table, which no one notices because they're too focused on cutting something rubbery enough to be a sandal. Someone bites into a date stuffed with pine nuts and honey. It's supposed to be a treat. He immediately spits it out because the date was also filled with ants. Dead ones, but still not part of the recipe. Your stomach grumbles in protest. You're not even sure if it's hunger or fear. Either way, you decide to politely excuse yourself. There's no polite way to say, your fish pie smells like an open grave, so you go with the classic, I forgot I have to wash my tunic. Your host doesn't protest. Maybe they know. Maybe they also regret this meal but feel obligated by tradition, pride, or just sheer stubbornness. You nod, gather your half-full bowl of defeat, and shuffle out the door before anyone offers you dessert. Ah, yes, dessert. You thought it was safe. Figs. Simple, ancient, sweet. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. The figs have fermented into a soft, moldy mess. They're soaked in fish sauce because someone thought it added depth. You take one bite and immediately understand why ancient Roman physicians thought vomiting after meals was a health ritual. It wasn't a cure. It was survival. You stagger out into the street, mouth open, gasping for unflavored air. Even the smell of the nearby latrines is better than the memory of whatever just dissolved on your tongue. You lean against a column and let the night air cool your skin, your regrets, and your burning esophagus. A cat eyes you from a rooftop, tail twitching. You can't tell if it's judging you or hoping you'll collapse so it can eat your eyebrows. Either seems likely. Back inside, laughter erupts. The kind of laugh that sounds like surrender, like people who've accepted their fate and are just trying to outlast it. You know tomorrow's dinner won't be better. You've seen the market, you've seen the meat vendor cleaning his knife with his own spit. You've watched flies hold town meetings on loaves of bread. You've heard rumors that a man died last week after eating a sausage stuffed with the wrong kind of mushrooms. You also know that you'll come back. Maybe not tomorrow, but soon. Because this is what Romans do. They eat together, suffer together, and pretend it wasn't that bad. They rinse their mouths with wine, wipe their hands on whatever fabric isn't already ruined, and soldier on. But not tonight. Tonight, you're done gambling with your gut. You're going home to chew on dry chickpeas, drink boiled water, and dream of a world where dinner doesn't come with a side of existential despair. As you walk, your stomach gurgles again. It's not over. Not by a long shot. You may have survived dinner, but the real battle is about to begin. In your intestines, you look up at the stars and whisper to no one, "Please, let the sponge at the latrine be clean." You hear it before you feel it. A low, groaning creak, like the building is stretching its bones in protest. You freeze. That sound could mean anything. A shift in the weather. A neighbor shifting a clay pot. Or your whole building deciding it's had enough of staying upright and is about to drop you into the street like a cracked egg. Your insula is 7 stories tall, barely held together by good intentions and crumbling plaster. You live on the 6th floor, which means you're lucky enough to see the stars through your window, but cursed enough to know you won't survive the fall if the structure gives in. It leans slightly east, like it's nodding off after a long day of not being maintained. Your neighbor swears he saw a rat running uphill across the ceiling. Nobody questioned him. The stairwell, if you can call it that, is a nightmare. A narrow spiral of splintered wood and mismatched stone, smeared with old wine, last week's vomit, and whatever someone's pet monkey did during its tantrum yesterday. You slipped once and cracked your shins so badly it turned purple for a week. And that was on a good day, with sunlight. Now, it's nighttime. The oil lamps are out, one bad step, and you're either dead or limping into the next life with a leg that bends sideways. Smoke curls in through the window. Not your fire, not yet. Someone else's bad luck tonight, 2 blocks over, maybe 3. You hope they made it out. Fires are common here. That's what happens when you cram 1,000 people into wooden matchboxes stacked on top of each other, all cooking with open flames and boiling oil. One gust of wind, and the whole neighborhood is a torch. You lean out your window as much as you dare and squint into the dark. The sky is a murky orange, the color of panic. Somewhere, a baby is screaming. Somewhere else, a man is shouting for a bucket. Below you, someone is laughing. You don't know what's worse. Back inside, your room smells like damp stone and desperation. The ceiling is cracked in a way that makes you nervous. You've considered sleeping on the stairs in case you need to escape fast, but you remember the rats and the fact that someone definitely uses that stairwell as a toilet. You'll take your chances in the room. At least here, you can pretend the ceiling won't fall. Someone's throwing up again. The walls are thin, and you've learned more about your neighbors' stomachs than you'd ever want to know. You try to ignore it, but then you hear a new sound. A soft mule. A wet slapping noise. You light a stub of a candle and hold it toward your bedroll. A cat. Giving birth. On your only blanket, of course. She stares at you with wild eyes as if this is somehow your fault. A half-born kitten, slick and squealing, wiggles against the fabric. You groan. You consider moving her, but she hisses and flashes her claws, and honestly, you're too tired to fight her for it. It's her blanket now. You'll figure something else out. Maybe the floor. You slide down beside the wall, wrap yourself in your tunic, and rest your head on your arm. The stone is cold, your joints ache. Something crawls over your foot, but you tell yourself it's just a harmless bug and not another rat. You close your eyes. Another groan. Louder this time. The wall beside you trembles slightly. You open your eyes, heart thumping. Was that the building? Was that the cat? Was that your imagination doing backflips because of the stress and the fumes? You don't know, and you don't sleep. Not really. You stare at the wall, breathing slow, waiting for the next sound, the next crack, the next reason to bolt. You don't undress. You don't lie flat. You're ready to run, if running will even help. But deep down, you know if the insula collapses tonight, you won't be outrunning anything. You'll just be part of the rubble. You lie flat on the wooden planks, arms crossed over your chest like a corpse at peace. But you're anything but peaceful. The insula breathes like a sick animal crackling, groaning, muttering to itself in the dark. Every sound is a warning. Every creak could be the one that finally sends the whole building tilting into the street, like an overbaked loaf falling from a shelf. Your blanket smells like someone else's sweat, because it is someone else's sweat. You traded a basket of shriveled figs for it last week, and regretted it instantly. But the nights in this city aren't warm, like the poetry says. They're damp, and that chill rises through the floor like a curse. So you pull it up to your nose and breathe through your mouth to keep the stench at bay. There's a soft shuffle near your toes. You freeze, a rat. Or worse, a child looking for bread. You flick your foot and feel something bounce away into the dark. Probably a rat, then. You hope it didn't leave droppings on your only pair of sandals. The moonlight oozes through the broken shutters, casting pale stripes across the room like bars on a jail cell. Your cellmates? A chamber pot filled to the brim, 3 snoring lumps you call neighbors, and a ceiling that looks like it's considering early retirement. You didn't eat dinner. Not really. Just a piece of yesterday's bread, soaked in the wine dregs from a cracked jug. Stomach has been punishing you since sundown. Each growl sounds louder in the dark, like it wants to make sure everyone in the room is aware of your digestive failures. You wrap your arms tighter around your ribs and try to shush it like a screaming child. Outside, the city is alive in a way you wish it wasn't. Somewhere down the alley, a dog barks with the rage of a soul trapped in a fur prison. Across the street, someone is vomiting with commitment. You recognize the rhythm of it. That's not his first amphora tonight. A voice shouts something obscene, then another voice shouts back, then glass breaks, then silence. You wait. Nothing else comes. Good. If they're killing each other, they're doing it quietly. The chamber pot shifts, not because it moved, because someone kicked it in their sleep. You hear the unmistakable slosh of a disaster narrowly avoided. You suck in a breath and close your eyes. If that thing spills, you're moving out. You don't care if it's 2 a.m. and you have nowhere to go. You'd rather sleep in the bathhouse and risk a lice infection than mop up that kind of tragedy. Your neighbor to the left begins grinding his teeth. Again. You'd tell him to stop, but last time you did, he offered to trade you the teeth for your blanket. You're not sure if he was joking. You stare at the knife you keep under your palate. It's not sharp. It's not clean. It's not even technically a knife anymore. More like a shard of something that once dreamed of being cutlery. But you keep it anyway. Not because it could protect you, but because holding it makes you feel like you might be in charge of your own fate. You once read that Roman night watchmen roamed the streets. Lanterns, staves, responsibility. Where are they now? Probably passed out in a brothel, or bribed to ignore the sound of theft. You don't trust them to guard a wheelbarrow, let alone a block of flats packed with the poorest souls in Rome. The ceiling cracks again. You flinch. A little piece of plaster crumbles onto your cheek. You don't brush it off. You've learned that moving makes it worse. Just lie still and pray it doesn't decide to come down in a bigger piece next time. Somewhere on the stairs, a floorboard pops. You sit up slowly, eyes wide. You listen. A shuffle, a pause, another creak. Someone is coming up, or down, or maybe just loitering. You reach for the knife, grip it tight. The metal is cold, even though it's been next to your body all night. Your heart isn't pounding, it's crawling. One slow beat at a time, waiting to see if this is it. The door rattles. Not your door, the one across the hall. You hear someone cough. Then a soft whimper. Then footsteps retreating. You don't put the knife down. You hold it until your hand cramps. Eventually, your body gives up. You lie back down, still in your clothes, with your eyes open and your mind spinning like a rat wheel. Every sound is a mystery. Every breeze is a threat. Every hour feels like a challenge to survive just a little longer. And yet, despite it all, you find yourself drifting, not to sleep. Sleep is for people with beds and doors that lock. You drift to that half-conscious haze where dreams mix with memories and your brain starts cataloguing regrets like a bored librarian. In the distance, you hear the faint bells of a temple's early prayers. Morning is coming, another day, another round of disappointments. You're not sure if that's comforting or cruel. Either way, you made it through the night. For now, you made it through the noise, the smells, the rodents, and the relentless grind, barely. The sun has slipped behind the uneven skyline of crooked insulae and soot-covered temples, leaving you with a sky the color of old blood and ash. The day isn't really over, but your body is. Your knees crack like old amphorae when you sit down, and the plank under you sags, exhausted in solidarity. Your feet are blistered from pacing cobbled roads that feel like they were laid by drunk gods. Your stomach is twisted from a stew that may or may not have included actual rat. You haven't bathed in 3 days, unless you count the drizzle that fell while you were hauling urine barrels to the laundry boys. You don't. That water was dirtier than your thoughts by the time it hit your skin. The Empire looks a lot different from the bottom. You're not marching in triumph, or lounging in a marble atrium while being fanned by imported servants. You're swatting flies with a sandal, and wondering if the buzzing in your ear is a fly, or your last coherent thought rattling loose. Your tunic smells like armpit soup. Your hair is stiff with either sweat or pigeon droppings, hard to tell anymore. And your back? It gave up around noon, just didn't send a formal resignation. It simply stopped cooperating, and now hums with dull pain every time you breathe. You chew on a crust of bread so dry it might actually be evolving into a weapon. Every bite sends shockwaves through your jaw. Someone across the alley is arguing about the price of spoiled olives. Again, that's been the soundtrack to your life. Yelling, banging, clanging, and the occasional scream that may or may not be medical. You thought Rome would feel grand, like history come to life. But this is history's armpit. The part between the shiny mosaics and the epic poems. The part that no one inscribes in stone because it stinks too much to memorialize. The man next to you coughs into a cloth that's gone grey with use. He's been coughing since morning, and now it sounds wet. You edge away, but there's nowhere to go. You're packed tighter than olives in brine. Every corner is occupied by someone else just trying to survive. A family sleeps under a single wool blanket. A widow rocks herself in a broken chair. A dog sniffs a pile of who knows what near the latrine. Sleep doesn't come easy. It never does. The walls creak, and every creak sounds like collapse. The stairs above groan under someone's weight. The baby 3 doors down starts wailing again, like she's been born into a joke and just got the punchline. You close your eyes and see darkness. Not peace, just the absence of anything better. Your dreams, when they come, are twisted reruns of the day. You're running from a fire, with a chamber pot in one hand, and your sandals melting off your feet. You're back at the bathhouse. Only this time, the man with boils is also giving a speech on hygiene. You wake up gasping, drenched in sweat that smells like your lunch. You wonder, truly wonder, how anyone does this every day. Not just once, not just for a day, but for a lifetime. How do you grow old in a city where everything is constantly trying to poison you, crush you, infect you, or tax you? How do you fall in love in a place that smells like smoked fish and regret? How do you raise children when the street is full of drunk gladiator fans and stolen chickens? And yet, people do. They sell wine from cracked jugs and laugh about it. They gather to hear the latest scandal shouted in the forum and cheer like it matters. They pass around honeyed nuts, share gossip, and live. Not just exist. Somehow, they live. But You? You're just visiting, dropped into this place like a stray sandal in a latrine trench. You don't belong here. Your body isn't built for this. Your mind keeps reaching for a comfort that doesn't exist in this century. You wouldn't last a day in ancient Rome. You barely made it through one. And tomorrow, you'd have to do it all again. The chamber pot would still be full, the bread still full of grit, the streets still teeming with more chaos than a tavern on payday. You'd still be broke, bent, and blistered before the sun even hit your shadow. But the Romans, the real ones, they did it, day after day, with dignity, with grit, with an absolutely shocking tolerance for fermented fish sauce. They built an empire, not with marble and gold, but with backs like yours aching and bruised, with feet like yours, swollen and cracked, with hands like yours, dirty and trembling, still trying to carry water uphill both ways. So, maybe, just maybe, there's something to admire there. Not the monuments, not the generals, but the people who woke up in rooms that stank like boiled feet and still got to work. But you? No judgment. You're going back to your clean sheets, your climate control, and your noise-cancelling headphones. Go ahead, turn off the lights. Take a deep breath. Appreciate the silence. And as you drift off to sleep, just remember, history isn't always grand. Sometimes, it's just surviving the stink